TV trash. Mel Brooks, what the frack happened to you? Okay, while we can all agree that Mel Brooks has been a very successful creator of comedic entertainment, let's be honest, the guy is pretty much a one-trick pony. Even dating back to the days of Get Smart, he's built his entire career on parodying pop culture, usually with a lot of sexual innuendo thrown in. And to his credit, that worked for quite a while, especially when he had the right talent surrounding him. However, by the 90s, it looked like he had pretty much lost either his touch or the right people around him, as just about everything he's cranked out since then has been mediocre with tired old jokes to say the least, to the point where he even started rebooting his old works with not great results. And depending on what side of the fence you're on, either the good times ended or the bad times began pretty much with Spaceballs. Let me make this clear. Whatever you may think of Spaceballs now, the truth is when the movie was first released in 1987, it did not do well at the box office. However, it is also true that the infamous Star Wars parody did salvage itself over the years later thanks to repeated showings on cable TV, and it has since become a cult classic, especially among the geek community, for an admittedly decent cast, some good one-liners, and the ability to poke fun at movie culture with terms like
merchandising, where the real money from the movie is made.
Which is why it was the perfect movie to create an animated series for. 21 years later. Spaceballs! Yes, people, this is not just a legend. This cartoon actually exists. It was supposedly in development hell for many years, though I can't find a lot to verify that claim, before it finally started production in 2005 for an eventual release in 2008. I might have gotten around to it long ago if I myself wasn't sure that this show was real until I actually found the episodes. But it's completely understandable if you didn't know this show really existed, since it aired on the G4 network. Yeah, how bad do you have to be when you're on a network that UPN can call a loser? I could probably do a whole video on just everything that went wrong with G4. Yes, let's create a network devoted to video games at a time when most gamers are going to the internet for that sort of thing anyway. Oh, but don't worry, we're going to be totally relevant, because we're going to be anchored by a testosterone-fueled geek news show that will have Olivia Munn's boobs to keep everyone tuned in. So yeah, I'm not going to comment on if this show was the one that pushed the network over the edge, because that was likely going to happen anyway. For now, let's just take a look at Spaceballs, the animated series. So there actually seems to be some debate as to how much input Mel Brooks himself had with this show. He only wrote one episode and didn't direct any, but supposedly did oversee the writing as well as create the opening theme song. And yes, he does reprise his roles, providing the voices of Yogurt and President Scroob. They also managed to bring back Daphne Zuniga as Princess Vespa and Joan Rivers as Dot Matrix, as clearly the former had nothing better to do, and the latter was always willing to do anything to stay in the business. And I wasn't able to actually find the pilot episode that Brooks wrote. It supposedly changed up a few things from the movie, mainly revealing that Lone Star wasn't a prince after all, so he and Vespa didn't actually get married, so maybe it's good I can't show you that to prevent you from throwing your mouse at the computer screen. So the first episode we do get is titled Revenge of the Sithy. Yeah, they're going there. And we start in a rip-off of that Vegas casino that everyone recognizes but no one knows, where we see, okay, what the hell even? Yeah, they basically turned Dark Helmet into looking like he's a 50-year-old Stewie Griffin. What makes it worse is that all the other characters, especially the one Brooks voices, are drawn to realistically resemble their live-action counterparts. But the one character in the movie that was really really funny gets the shaft like this. You just know that Rick Moranis had to take one look at this and say, nope, I don't regret quitting Hollywood at all. Okay, let's get the big thing out of the way, the animation. You all know I don't harp on animation that much, especially when I know that Flash is the way of the future, but yeah, you can definitely look at this and have flashbacks to Control-Alt-Delete. However, there is another show that this animation style reminds me of. Archer, which has actually built up a pretty big following, which just once again goes to show you that writing carries a cartoon show more than anything else. But does this show deliver where it counts?
Yeah, this is the latest in stripper technology. State of the art.
Oh, that sounds...
Shut up. With these buttons, you can customize your own personal stripper. What do you like?
Why don't you take your hat off so I can see your big manly eyes?
I never take my helmet off in public. Too risky.
Aw, you're not afraid of little old me.
Well, maybe just this once.
I'm guessing this is how Charlie Sheen's gonna ultimately die because it's clear he's immune to all the drugs. And this takes Helmet into a dream sequence about his childhood as Panikin Crybaby.
What kind of stupid name is that?
Where he was apparently a perverted version of Jimmy Neutron and his family was the property of Scroob's department store before he got sold to Outlet Mall, but he challenges Mall to a pod race to go with yogurt instead, and then he falls for a princess who's clearly supposed to be Vespa's mother, which makes no sense because Vespa was never shown to be Helmet's daughter, and then his mother gets killed by tax agents. I wish I was kidding. And of course he eventually leaves yogurt for Scroob, but Vespa's mom leaves him because he got this huge bump from fighting Outlet Mall, and that's why he finally relents to wearing a helmet, and throughout all of this, they cram in almost as many boob gags as the whole series of Stripperella. And why did I have to run out of the key ingredient to make more liquid IQ now? Hey, essence of virgin genius ain't easy to come by if you're not willing to take the extreme measures. I'm not killing nerds who can't get laid! Now I joke about this, but to be honest, this first episode is still probably the best one because it at least did make sense for these characters to parody the Star Wars prequels. But they still have at least 12 more episodes to make, which is why the next one gives us Lone Star and Vespa getting caught in a video game? What, are they trying to parody Wreck-It Ralph here? But wait, Wreck-It Ralph came out in 2012, 4 years after this cartoon was made.
You'll create a time paradox.
And that's pretty much what you get. Every single episode of this series is a parody of some movie. They do nothing but parody the likes of Lord of the Rings, Jurassic Park, Pirates of the Caribbean, Armageddon, and Spider-Man. I will never accept any claims that Demo Reel sucked ever again. All of this lies within the primary problem with making this series. Spaceballs was specifically created to parody Star Wars, and there's only so far you can go with that. If they had actually worked to move on from that and extend the story and develop the characters further from what we saw in the movie, like they supposedly did in that vanished pilot, that might have been interesting. But again, Mel Brooks only knows how to do parody, and so that's the only thing they could do for this series. As a result, we pretty much get what the Super Mario Super Show did in just cranking out episodes that try to lampoon other movies and shows using characters that make no sense being in these other situations and shoehorning in a lot of really, really bad adult-themed material. And what's worse is that the stories aren't even good parodies. Like in Lord of the Onion Rings, where Barf finds an evil onion ring in the couch of the Eagle 5 and has to destroy it to keep it from Scroob by throwing it into the deep fryer of Lardor. That is the worst parable for speaking out against fast food I have ever heard, and I saw the Kim Possible episode Grande Size Me. And too often you get a bad job of mixing and matching parodies, like an episode that combines Harry Potter and Caddyshack, because those two movies just fit so well together, right? Don't drink and write, people. And of course they have to include a DeLorean in the Terminator parody. Geez, this is the kind of stuff Jason Fox would try to come up with. And then Watch Your Asic Park is about Scroob creating steroid-laced dinosaur athletes to help his baseball team win, and well, this is how they find out his plan in the first 5 minutes of the episode.
So you're saying it's a coincidence he's here?
The episode had to start somehow.
He's obviously plotting to foil my latest evil plan.
What's Scroob doing here?
I bet he's plotting an evil plan as we speak.
Look, Scroob, why don't you just tell us what your evil plan is so we can speed things along here?
Okay, fair enough.
So you're basically poking fun at Jurassic Park, sports, and cartoons where the villain's plan is too obvious, and failing at all three worse than if you had Uwe Boll do it. But what can you expect when they so clearly went uber cheap on the production staff? The writers did include Julian David Chambers, the latter of which does have a resume that includes writing for Bosom Buddies, The Wonder Years, and Hanging with Mr. Cooper. But then we have Boomy Aglietti, whose only other writing credit was one episode of the Flavor Flav sitcom Under One Roof, and who has since been known just for appearing on Jeopardy and acting in the fan film Shamelessly She-Hulk. Adam Kozlov did have work as a producer's assistant on Dilbert, the Men in Black cartoon, and the Jackie Chan adventures, but has no other writing credits. And Joe Meehan, who has pretty much done nothing else before or since, and who I almost got confused with Joseph Meehan, aka Joey Ryan, the professional wrestler. The directors were led by Chad Hames, whose only credits before this show were a graphic supervisor on Starship Troopers, line producer on the National Lampoon animated movie Jake's Booty Call, and a co-producer on Happily Never After. And then David Duloc, a guy whose other credits are mostly cinematography and other technical work. Now, it is possible to find good writers and creators just out of nowhere. Joe Ruby and Ken Spears were sound engineers before they were given the chance to write Scooby-Doo. But in an era where everyone says experience matters, you would think any professional cartoon show would rely on more skins than hiring 3 writers and 2 directors with virtually no experience in those areas. I'm sure all these people have good abilities in the areas they previously worked on, but it looks like you hunted down your creative staff by advertising on Craigslist. And it only makes things worse that the characters get completely butchered as well. The Mel Brooks characters are about the only things close to being somewhat entertaining, but even then they become cliches that at least fit their personas. Scroob is a stock cartoon villain with a new take over the world plan every week, and Yogurt is a standard senile, sarcastic old mentor type.
Yogurt, I need your help.
Right now, I'm in the middle of something.
N42. But we're in the middle of the end of Planet Druidia.
Well, the middle of the end, that's better than the end of the end.
Meanwhile, Helmet, who again was the best thing in the movie, is nothing but a twisted man-child lackey that Scroob loves to abuse.
Building the enlarging ray was phase 1.
Maybe we should stay at phase 1.
For how long?
Eternity! Every time we go to phase 2, Lone Star shows up and ruins everything. From now on, I want all our evil plans to stop at phase 1. We've got an enlarging ray, wonderful. Maybe we can do other stuff with it. I can use it late at night, who knows?
I'm sorry, it only works on ants.
While Lone Star and Vespa have both become selfish, shallow jerks, only looking out for each other's best interests. They barely even fight Dave and Maddie style in these episodes, which makes you wonder if they really are even attracted to one another anymore.
There aren't any more princes in the galaxy. Just marry me already.
Oh, sweetie, I like you too. But rules are rules, and I just won't be happy without a prince.
Well, don't come crying to me that you're lonely in 30 years.
Sing a cheesy love song about Lone Star. The audience will eat it up.
After how Lone Star tried to use me? Please, I am not in love with him right now.
So fake it. You are a woman. Come on. You know what I mean?
Perhaps the worst example of all of this was the American Idol parody episode. It actually had a decent idea about Scroob using the show to turn everyone on Druidia who voted into zombie slaves, but the problem is that the heroes do nothing to make us support them for the first 2 acts. Hey, remember when Lone Star actually had a heart and was willing to forego the reward for rescuing Vespa, and Vespa's being a spoiled brat was just played up for comedy purposes? Yet here they're both manipulating pricks who try to use fake identities and rig the judging panel to win their little reality singing contest to get the prize money for their own ends. How do you thrack up an attempt to ridicule reality TV worse than even Stevens did? Sadly, one of the few episodes that at least felt like it had some cohesion was the last one, the Spider-Man parody. And even then it was about Barf gaining the ability to burp webbing and eat anything that got trapped in that webbing. But yeah, with Spaceballs the animated series, what we got is what we didn't need. You know what this show reminds me of? It reminds me of the Nostalgia Critic and AVGN movies where they throw in so many geek culture references that it could be hard to keep track of everything. But at least in those cases, it was done by people who were clearly poking fun at themselves and admitting they were dorks that obsessed about stuff like that. This comes off as people playing Mad Libs with pop culture to create unfunny parody using characters that make no sense performing said parody while removing what made the characters entertaining in their original work. It almost feels like the show was created specifically to piss off those who wanted a continuation of Spaceballs for so long, as if to intentionally say, be careful what you wish for in the most unfunny way possible. And this is what we get from Mel Brooks nowadays when we still haven't gotten the History of the World Part 2. But sadly, this isn't the only case of a cheaply made animated series that reboots beloved characters in an apparent attempt to make really bad comedy. Yep, people. Next time, it's time.